My name is Natalie. I'm 32 years old. And I've spent most of my life trying to earn my father's love. Right now, I'm staring at my phone, reading his birthday party invitation for the third time, and each word feels like a knife. The message is crystal clear. Adults only celebration at the Sterling Club. No children allowed. If you can't arrange childcare, please don't attend. My 5-year-old daughter Lily is at the kitchen table coloring, humming softly, completely unaware that her grandfather just uninvited her. This isn't the first time he's made it clear she isn't welcome, but something about this moment feels different. I typed my response, hit send, and little did I know that one dinner reservation would expose the truth I'd been blind to for years. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you've ever felt rejected by family, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Make sure to subscribe because what unfolds at that restaurant will shock you. Trust me. You won't want to miss how my father's face looked when he discovered who I was dining with instead of attending his party. Now, let's get into the story. To understand why that invitation hurt so much, you need to know my family history. My father Richard is 65 now, a successful real estate developer who built an empire from nothing. My mother Catherine died when I was 11 after a brutal battle with cancer. I remember her as warm, kind, always putting me first. She made me feel loved in a way I haven't felt since she passed. The year after Mom died, Dad married Claudia, and everything changed. Claudia brought her daughter Veronica into our lives. Veronica was 9 then, now she's 19, and from day one, the favoritism was obvious. When Veronica got a B on a spelling test, Dad threw her a pizza party. When I won a statewide essay competition that same year, he forgot to pick me up from the awards ceremony. I waited outside the school for 2 hours until a teacher drove me home. The pattern continued through my teenage years and into adulthood. Veronica's high school graduation had 200 guests, a live band, and fireworks. My college graduation, where I was giving the valedictorian speech, Dad arrived 40 minutes late and left during the reception. He said he had an important business call. I found out later he left to take Veronica shopping for her prom dress. When I got married to Derek 7 years ago, Dad gave a toast that lasted 90 seconds, and mentioned how proud he was of the family 3 times, but never said my name. At Veronica's 19th birthday party last year, his toast went on for 10 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. I timed it because I was standing there wondering when he'd ever spoken about me with that much emotion. 3 years into my marriage, I got pregnant with Lily. I was so excited to tell Dad, thinking maybe a grandchild would bring us closer. His response was ice-cold disappointment. He said, "You're really going to derail your career for this. Not congratulations. Not excitement. Just judgment." When Lily was born, he didn't come to the hospital. Claudia sent flowers with a card that said, "Best wishes on your new journey." It felt like I'd started a hobby, not brought his first grandchild into the world. Over the next 5 years, Dad met Lily exactly 4 times. 4 times in 5 years. Each visit was awkward, brief, with him checking his watch constantly. Meanwhile, he took Veronica on European vacations, bought her a luxury car for her 18th birthday, and funded her lifestyle, while she bounced between failed business ideas and party circuits. My marriage to Derek fell apart 2 years ago when he left me for a 24-year-old colleague from his accounting firm. I was devastated, suddenly a single mother trying to hold everything together. Dad's response when I told him? "Well, marriage is hard work. Maybe you should have tried harder." Not sympathy, not support, just another way to make me feel like I'd failed. I work as a marketing director at a mid-sized firm. Decent salary, but nothing extravagant. Especially not for raising a child alone in this economy. I've built a life for Lily and me through sheer determination. Asking Dad for nothing because I learned years ago that asking meant giving him another opportunity to choose Veronica over me. So when that birthday invitation arrived with its clear message that my daughter wasn't welcome, something inside me finally broke. Not in a destructive way, but in a liberating one. I texted back, "Understood. I won't be attending. Happy birthday, Dad." His response came 30 seconds later. "Good. Glad you're being reasonable for once." That single word, reasonable, as if wanting to include my child in family events was unreasonable. I sat at my kitchen table, watching Lily color a picture of our family with bright crayons, and I refused to cry in front of her. The day after I declined Dad's party invitation, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "I heard about the birthday situation." And it was from Patricia, my father's older sister. Patricia is 68 now, elegant and sharp, and she'd been estranged from Dad for 10 years after a massive falling out over how he treated me following his remarriage. I hadn't spoken to her in months, though we exchanged Christmas cards. Her email was brief but warm, asking if we could meet for coffee. Something in her tone made me agree, so Wednesday afternoon, I met her at a quiet cafe downtown. Patricia looked exactly as I remembered, wearing a silk scarf and designer glasses, her silver hair perfectly styled. She hugged me tightly, and I felt tears threaten because it had been so long since anyone from Dad's side of the family had shown me genuine affection. We sat down with our coffees, and Patricia got straight to the point. She'd heard through mutual family friends that Dad had essentially uninvited me from his birthday by making it a no-children event. Her face was tight with anger as she spoke. "Natalie, I need to tell you something that's going to upset you, but you deserve to know the truth." She explained that for years, Dad had been lying to extended family about me. He told relatives that I refused to visit, that I was too busy with my own life to make time for family. He portrayed himself as the disappointed father of an ungrateful daughter who couldn't be bothered with her aging parent. Meanwhile, he threw lavish parties for Veronica, introduced her to everyone as his pride and joy, and never mentioned that he had another daughter unless directly asked. When people inquired about me, he'd sigh heavily and say something like, "Natalie's going through a difficult phase. We're giving her space." Patricia had been watching this pattern for years from a distance. She witnessed Claudia systematically isolating Dad from his original family, replacing his relationships with her social circle. She watched Veronica become increasingly entitled and cruel, enabled by both Claudia and Dad. Patricia suspected there was a financial motive behind Claudia's behavior, some manipulation happening behind closed doors, but she had no proof. "I confronted your father about his treatment of you 10 years ago," Patricia said, her voice sad. "He chose Claudia's version of reality over the truth. We haven't spoken since, except for obligatory holiday cards, but I've been keeping track of you through friends, and Natalie, I'm so proud of the woman you've become despite everything." Then Patricia mentioned something that changed everything. She'd recently reconnected with Julian Montgomery, a retired federal judge who was 71 and incredibly respected in our city. Julian was also wealthy, widowed, and had been Patricia's neighbor and longtime friend for decades. "Julian knew your mother," Patricia said softly. "They were childhood friends, grew up on the same street. Has been wanting to meet you for months, but didn't want to intrude on your life without permission." She explained that Julian had seen an article about a charity gala where Id helped organize the marketing campaign, and had been impressed. Had asked Patricia about me, wanted to know how Catherine's daughter had turned out. Patricia had shown him photos, told him about my struggles and my strength, and Julian had expressed genuine admiration. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes bright with an idea. "Julian is treating me to dinner Friday night at Lumiere, that new French restaurant everyone's talking about. His granddaughter Sophie will be there too. She's 7 and absolutely delightful. Why don't you join us? Bring Lily." Julian specifically said he wanted to meet both of you. I hesitated, suspicious of pity invitations, but Patricia grabbed my hand. "This isn't tea charity, sweetheart. Julian genuinely wants to meet you. And honestly, I think you could use a reminder that not everyone in this family is like your father." The fact that children were not only allowed but encouraged made my throat tight with emotion. I agreed, not knowing this dinner would intersect with Dad's birthday party in the most dramatic way possible. Patricia smiled, squeezed my hand, and said, "Friday at 8. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful. You deserve to be celebrated, Natalie." Friday arrived faster than I expected. I'd originally arranged for my neighbor Mrs. Henderson to babysit Lily, but then Patricia sent me a text that made my eyes water. "Julian insists Lily comes. His granddaughter Sophie is so excited to meet her. Children are blessings, not burdens. See you at 8. I stood in my closet that evening, searching for something appropriate for a fancy French restaurant. I settled on an elegant navy dress, simple but sophisticated, with pearl earrings my mother had left me. As I did my makeup, I caught my reflection and barely recognized the confident woman staring back. I'd spent so long feeling less than, feeling rejected, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted somewhere. Lily was bouncing with excitement as I did her hair in neat braids. I dressed her in a pretty floral dress with white tights and her good shoes. "Mommy, are we going somewhere fancy?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Yes, baby. We're having dinner with some very nice people who want to meet you." "Will they like me?" Lily asked. And my heart broke a little because at 5 years old, she'd already absorbed some of my insecurity about family acceptance. "They're going to love you," I promised, kissing her forehead. "You're smart and kind and funny. How could they not?" As we drove toward the restaurant, I felt butterflies in my stomach, nervous but also excited in a way I hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away at the Sterling Club, Dad's birthday party was in full swing. Claudia had orchestrated everything with her usual precision and excess. Ice sculptures shaped like buildings representing Dad's real estate empire dominated the entrance. A live jazz band played in the corner. Catered cuisine from the most expensive service in the city filled elaborate tables. The guest list was carefully curated. Dad's business associates, Claudia's entire social circle, Veronica's friends, who treated the event like their own party. Conspicuously absent was anyone from Dad's original family. Patricia obviously wasn't invited. Dad's brother Thomas and his wife Diane had been told the party was intimate family only. Yet there were over 100 people there. The message was clear. Claudia's definition of family didn't include anyone who remembered Dad before her. Veronica arrived fashionably late in an ostentatious red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, carrying a designer bag, acting like the evening was her coronation. She held court with her friends, and I later learned she was making snide comments to guests about me. "Yeah, my sister couldn't make it. She's always so busy with her kid. Poor thing can't get her life together." Claudia chimed in whenever Natalie's absence was mentioned. "We offered to help with childcare, but Natalie's so proud. She won't accept any support." Dad said nothing during these conversations, just nodded along, perhaps a flicker of something crossing his face. Disappointment? Guilt? Whatever it was, he buried it quickly under another glass of expensive scotch and another round of handshakes with business contacts. The timing was almost cinematic. At 7:45, Dad was cutting his elaborate birthday cake, surrounded by applauding guests who barely knew him beyond business transactions. At 7:50, I was walking into Lumiere with Lily's hand in mine, Patricia waiting by the entrance with a warm smile. The restaurants were only 3 blocks apart, existing in parallel universes. In one, Dad celebrated surrounded by superficial connections and the family that had slowly poisoned his relationships. In the other, I was about to experience what real family felt like. I had no idea our worlds were about to collide in the most explosive way possible. Walking into Lumiere felt like entering a dream. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white tablecloths. Classical music played quietly in the background, and the staff moved with practiced elegance. The maître d' greeted Patricia warmly, then turned to an older gentleman standing beside him. "Judge Montgomery, your usual table is ready." Julian Montgomery was tall and distinguished, silver-haired with kind eyes, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He approached me with a warm smile and extended his hand. "Natalie, I've been looking forward to meeting you for months. Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become." His voice carried such genuine emotion that I felt tears prick my eyes. Before I could respond, a little girl with curly hair bounded over. "Hi, I'm Sophie. Are you Lily? Grandpa Julian said you were coming. Want to see the fish tank? It's huge." Lily looked up at me for permission, and I nodded. The two girls ran off toward the massive aquarium built into the restaurant's wall, leaving me with Patricia and Julian. We were seated at a premium booth with a perfect view of the restaurant, including the entrance. The staff brought a special coloring set for the girls without being asked, and I realized this was Julian's regular table, where he was clearly a valued patron. As we settled in, Julian began explaining his connection to my mother. "Catherine and I grew up 3 houses apart. We were best friends from age 6 until high school. I was in love with her, actually, though I never told her. When she met your father at college, I could see how happy she was. I stepped aside because her happiness mattered more than my feelings." Julian's eyes grew distant with memory. "Your mother was the kindest person I ever knew. She had this way of making everyone feel seen and valued. When she married Richard, I was genuinely happy for her. I thought he was a good man who would cherish her the way she deserved." His expression darkened slightly. "But when she got sick, I noticed changes. Richard became more distant, more focused on building his business empire. Catherine would call me sometimes, just to talk, and I could hear the loneliness in her voice. After she died, Richard changed completely. He remarried so quickly, barely a year later. I attended Catherine's funeral, saw you standing there, this lost little girl, trying to be brave, and I wanted so badly to help. But I didn't want to overstep boundaries or complicate your grief." Patricia added, "Julian's been keeping track of you through me over the years. Every time I'd mention your accomplishments, your strength in raising Lily alone, he'd say, 'That's Catherine's daughter. She inherited her mother's courage.'" Julian nodded, his voice warm. "When Patricia showed me that article about the charity gala you organized, I was so impressed. Not just with your professional success, but with the grace evident in how you handled everything. I knew I had to meet you." He looked at Lily and Sophie, now giggling together over their coloring books. "Children are never a burden, Natalie. They're blessings. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise doesn't deserve you in their life." His words struck something deep inside me. This man, who barely knew me, showed more understanding and acceptance in 5 minutes than my father had in decades. The conversation flowed naturally as appetizers arrived: seared scallops that melted on my tongue, truffle risotto that tasted like luxury. Julian mentioned almost casually that he sat on the board of several charitable foundations, including one that supported single parents pursuing career advancement. "We're actually looking for a new director of communications. Patricia mentioned you have a background in marketing. It wasn't a job offer yet, but the interest was genuine." He mentioned a salary range that was nearly double my current income, and I tried not to look too eager. The role would involve developing strategic messaging for our programs, managing media relations, overseeing our digital presence. "Based on what Patricia's told me about your work, I think you'd be exceptional." We were discussing the details when Lily ran over, her face bright with excitement. "Mommy, Sophie knows all the princess movies, and she has a dollhouse at her grandpa's house with real lights." Julian smiled indulgently. "Sophie stays with me every other weekend. My son and his wife appreciate the break, and I love having her around. The house feels less empty with children's laughter in it." I felt warmth spread through my chest, thinking about how different this was from Dad's attitude. Here was a man who welcomed children, celebrated them, built his life around connection, rather than image. At 8:15, as our main courses arrived, I happened to glance toward the restaurant entrance to see if the waiter was bringing more bread. My blood turned to ice. Standing at the host stand, looking around with an expression of entitled impatience, was Veronica. Veronica was with her boyfriend Brett, a 25-year-old finance type wearing too much cologne and an expression of practiced superiority. They were arguing with the host, and even from across the restaurant, I could see the confrontation escalating. The host maintained professional composure. "I'm terribly sorry, we're fully booked this evening. Our next availability is 3 weeks from today. May I recommend our sister restaurant across town?" Veronica's voice carried across the quiet dining room. "Do you know who my father is? Richard Chen? He basically owns half this city's commercial real estate. I'm sure you can find us a table." The host remained firm but polite. "I apologize, miss, but we're at capacity. Even for walk-ins, we cannot accommodate additional guests this evening." As Veronica continued her entitled tirade, her eyes scanned the dining room, probably looking for a manager to complain to. Her gaze landed on our table, specifically on me. I watched shock, then calculation, then pure rage cross her face in rapid succession. She took in Julian, clearly wealthy and important based on how the staff had greeted him. She saw Patricia, whom she probably barely remembered but recognized as family. She saw the elegant table setting, the expensive wine Julian had ordered, the obvious significance of the dinner. Her face contorted with an ugly expression I'd seen many times before. That look she got when something didn't go her way or when someone else received attention she thought she deserved. Veronica whispered something to Brett, then marched across the restaurant toward our table, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floor. I felt my body tense, protective instincts kicking in as Lily looked up curiously. Veronica stopped at our table, hands on her hips, voice dripping with fake sweetness mixed with venom. Well, Natalie. Fancy seeing you here." She drew out each word, making sure nearby tables could hear. "I thought you couldn't make it to Dad's birthday because you had prior commitments. How interesting that your prior commitment is having fancy dinner at Lumiere." She used air quotes around prior commitments, her voice mocking. I took a slow breath, determined not to give her the reaction she wanted. "Hello, Veronica. I do have prior commitments. This is one of them." I kept my voice level, didn't offer explanations or introductions, didn't justify myself. My lack of engagement seemed to infuriate her further. Her face flushed red, and her voice rose. "You're unbelievable. Dad's birthday party is happening right now, 3 blocks away at the Sterling Club. And you're here having some fancy dinner." She leaned closer, hissing loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "With strangers? Instead of family? What kind of daughter does that?" Lily looked up from her coloring, her little face confused and frightened by the angry woman looming over our table. My protective instincts roared to life. "Veronica, this isn't the time or place. Please lower your voice. You're scaring my daughter." But Veronica was on a roll, feeding off her own outrage. "Your daughter? Your daughter is the reason you can't participate in family events. Maybe if you'd made better life choices, you wouldn't be a struggling single mother who has to skip important family celebrations." Julian stood up, and I realized for the first time how commanding his presence was. His full height and the authority he carried from decades as a federal judge radiated from him. His voice was measured but carried steel underneath. "Young lady, you're upsetting the children and disturbing other guests. I suggest you return to the host stand and handle your reservation issues appropriately." Veronica was momentarily taken aback, probably not used to being directly challenged. She tried to recover, her voice still sharp. "And who are you exactly?" "Some random old guy my sister picked up to make herself feel important." Julian's expression didn't change, but I saw ice in his eyes. "I'm someone who values manners and decorum, 2 things you seem to lack entirely. This is a private dinner. And you're intruding. I suggest you leave before the management has you removed." Veronica laughed, but it sounded forced. "This is family business. Natalie is supposed to be at our father's birthday party right now, and instead she's here pretending she's too good for us. Patricia finally spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of age and family connection. Your father uninvited her, Veronica. Or did he conveniently forget to mention that detail? Veronica faltered. He didn't uninvite her. He just said no kids allowed. That's perfectly reasonable for an adult event. Patricia's laugh was bitter. Natalie has a 5-year-old child, Veronica. Telling her no kids allowed is telling her not to come. Or did you think she could just leave Lily in a closet for the evening? The sarcasm was cutting, and I saw other diners watching now, their attention drawn to the drama. Brett, Veronica's boyfriend, finally tried to intervene, pulling on her arm. Babe, let's just go. We can eat somewhere else. But Veronica shook him off, her need to win this confrontation overriding common sense. You're so selfish, Natalie. Always have been. Dad gives you everything, and you throw it in his face. Her voice was getting shrill now. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous that Dad loves me more. That I'm more successful. That I actually matter to this family. I felt something snap inside me. Years of swallowed hurt, of biting my tongue, of accepting less than I deserved. My voice when I spoke was quiet but clear, carrying across the now silent restaurant. Name one thing, Veronica. One single thing Dad has given me since Mom died. One birthday remembered, one graduation attended on time, one moment where he chose me over you. I'll wait. Veronica's mouth opened and closed, searching for ammunition. He paid for your college. I had a full academic scholarship. I corrected. He didn't pay a single tuition dollar. Try again. He helped you when you got divorced. He told me I should have tried harder to keep my marriage together. That's not help. That's judgment. Veronica's face was now bright red, her perfect facade cracking. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking with rage. You know what? I'm done with this. I'm calling Dad right now. He needs to know what you're doing, skipping his birthday to have dinner with random people. She started dialing, and I felt dread pool in my stomach. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I knew Dad would take her side. He always did. Veronica held up the phone, and I could hear it ringing. Once. Twice. Then Dad's voice. Veronica? Everything okay? The background noise was loud, party sounds, laughter, jazz music playing. Veronica hit the speaker button, her voice triumphant. Dad, you won't believe what I just found. Natalie's at Lumiere right now, having fancy dinner with strangers while your birthday party is happening. I'm looking right at her. Silence on the other end, long enough that I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Dad's voice, cold and flat. Is that so? It wasn't a question. Veronica, sensing victory, pressed on. Want me to send you the address? You should come see this for yourself. She's got Lily here, dressed all fancy, sitting with some old people I've never seen before. She chose this over your birthday, Dad. More silence, then 3 words that made my blood run cold. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The line went dead. Veronica looked at me with undisguised triumph. Hes coming. This should be good. She and Brett finally walked away, heading outside to wait, leaving our table in shocked silence. I felt sick. Julian placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, his voice kind. Whatever happens, Natalie, you're not alone here. You've done nothing wrong. Patricia reached across the table, squeezing my hand. It's time Richard saw the truth. It's long past time, but I couldn't speak. Lily looked up at me with worried eyes. Mommy, is Grandpa mad at us? I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. No, sweetheart, everything's going to be okay. But I didn't believe my own words. I counted the minutes, each one feeling like an eternity, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. 9 minutes later, the restaurant doors opened, and my father walked in. Richard Chen at 65 still carried himself with the authority of a successful businessman. But right now his face was flushed with anger. Claudia was right behind him, her expression pinched with displeasure. Both of them overdressed from the party, looking completely out of place in their formal evening wear among Lumiere's elegant but understated atmosphere. Dad's eyes scanned the restaurant with barely contained fury, landing on our table like a predator spotting prey. I watched him process the scene. Me sitting calmly, Lily coloring beside me, Patricia, whom he hadn't spoken to in 10 years, and Julian Montgomery, a man he clearly recognized and whose presence seemed to give him momentary pause. But the pause didn't last long. Dad strode across the restaurant, his footsteps heavy, Claudia's heels clicking behind him. Other diners turned to watch, the confrontation impossible to ignore. He reached our table and completely ignored Julian and Patricia, his focus entirely on me. Natalie. What the hell is this? His voice was low but shaking with rage. I didn't stand, didn't cower, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me intimidated. Hello, Dad. This is dinner. What does it look like? My voice was steady despite my racing heart, despite the sick feeling in my stomach. Dad's face flushed darker. You know damn well what I mean. My birthday party is happening right now, 3 blocks away. And you're here? Having some fancy dinner instead of celebrating with your family. I met his eyes directly. Hello, Dad. This is dinner with people who actually wanted me here. What brings you by? The slight emphasis on wanted made his jaw clench. I throw you an olive branch, invite you to my birthday despite everything, and this is how you repay me. His voice was rising now, drawing more attention from surrounding tables. Olive branch. I kept my voice level. You told me not to come if I couldn't leave my 5-year-old daughter behind. That's not an olive branch, Dad. That's a rejection. I said it was an adult event, he shot back. That's perfectly reasonable for a birthday celebration. To you, maybe, I replied. Not to a mother who's done with being told her child isn't welcome at family events. Claudia finally interjected, her voice syrupy with false reasonableness. We offered to arrange childcare, Natalie. You're the one who chose to get offended and decline the invitation entirely. I turned my gaze to her. This woman who'd systematically poisoned my relationship with my father for 20 years. You never offered anything. Claudia. You sent a group text that said no children allowed. Don't attend if you can't arrange care. That's not an offer. That's a dismissal. Claudia's mask slipped slightly, irritation flashing across her face. Well, some events simply aren't appropriate for children. It's nothing personal. Patricia's voice cut through. Sharp and clear. Richard's 50th birthday had 12 children there, including a bouncy castle in the backyard. I remember because you specifically asked me to help entertain them. Claudia's face tightened. That was different. How? Patricia pressed. Because Veronica was one of those children? Because her friends' kids were there? Explain to me how that was different from tonight. Dad tried to redirect, his voice rising. Patricia, stay out of this. This is between me and my daughter. You haven't been part of this family for years. Patricia stood, her voice cold. I haven't been part of this family because I couldn't stomach watching you treat your own daughter like she was disposable. I'm still staying out of it, Richard. I've been out of your life for a decade, but I won't sit here silently while you berate Natalie for choosing people who actually care about her. Dad seemed to notice Julian for the first time, really notice him. Recognition and something else, maybe embarrassment, crossed his face. Julian Montgomery. I didn't realize you'd be here. Julian's voice was measured and calm. Richard. I'm having dinner with friends. You, however, are making a scene in one of my favorite establishments. The subtle rebuke in Julian's tone, the reminder that Dad was the one causing the disruption, made Dad pause. He suddenly seemed aware of the dozens of eyes watching, the cell phones probably recording, the social cost of this public confrontation. But had found my voice now. Years of hurt and frustration bubbling up. You want to know why I'm here instead of your party, Dad? Because these people, whom I just met tonight, have shown me more genuine kindness in 2 hours than you've shown me in 20 years. Dad's face contorted. That's not true, that's completely unfair. I've given you everything, Natalie. Everything. My voice was getting stronger, clearer. You missed my college graduation speech because Veronica had a hair appointment. You forgot my 30th birthday entirely. You've met your only grandchild exactly 4 times in 5 years. You didn't come to the hospital when she was born. You didn't call when my marriage fell apart. You didn't ask once how I was managing as a single mother. Dad tried to interrupt. You never asked for help. The words exploded from me. I shouldn't have to beg my own father to care about me. The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Every person watching this family drama unfold. Lily had stopped coloring, tears streaming down her face as she pressed against my side. I pulled her close, my arm around her shoulders, protective and fierce. Claudia touched Dad's arm, her voice urgent and low. "Richard, let's go." She's being dramatic. "Our guests are waiting." But Julian spoke up, his voice carrying authority. "Mrs. Chen, perhaps you should listen to what your stepdaughter is saying instead of dismissing her pain as drama." Claudia turned on Julian, her mask fully dropping now. "This is a private family matter. Judge Montgomery, with all due respect, you have no place in this conversation." "I have every place," Julian replied calmly. "When a scene is being made in a public restaurant, upsetting children, and disturbing other patrons, I'm a regular here, and I won't watch someone be verbally abused at the next table without speaking up." The word abused hung in the air, and I saw Dad flinch. For just a moment, something shifted in his expression. He looked at Lily crying, at me holding her protectively, at the faces of other diners showing sympathy for me. Not him. Guilt flickered across his features, maybe recognition, possibly shame. But then Claudia's hand tightened on his arm, her voice sharp. "Richard, our guests are waiting at your birthday party. We need to go, now." I watched the moment Dad made his choice. He looked at Claudia, then back at me. The silence stretched out, painful and heavy. I found myself holding my breath. Would he choose differently this time? Would he finally see what he'd been doing? Would 20 years of rejection and favoritism suddenly become clear to him? The hope hurt worse than the resignation. His face hardened, the brief flicker of emotion disappearing behind his businessman mask. "When you're ready to act like an adult and stop being so sensitive about everything, we can have a conversation." He turned to leave, and something inside me broke, but also crystallized into clarity. "Dad, wait." My voice was strong now, not pleading, commanding. He paused and turned back. I stood up, lifting Lily into my arms, her face buried in my shoulder. "I'm done. Do you hear me? I'm done trying to earn your love. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done making myself smaller so Veronica can shine brighter. I'm done accepting crumbs of affection and calling it family." Dad's face flushed purple. "You're being ridiculous, Natalie." "No," I said firmly. "I'm being honest for the first time in my life. I'm putting myself and my daughter first, the way a parent should." My voice didn't waver as I continued. "Don't contact me unless you're ready to be a real father and grandfather. Not just when it's convenient for you, not just when it fits into Claudia's social calendar, but actually showing up and being present. Until then, we're done." Claudia's voice was icy. "Richard, let's go. Shay's not worth this embarrassment." Those words hung in the air, poisonous and revealing. Not worth this embarrassment. Dad allowed himself to be led away. But at the restaurant door, he looked back one final time. I didn't look at him. I was too busy comforting Lily, wiping her tears, whispering that everything would be okay. After they left, the restaurant remained silent for a long moment. Then Julian began to clap, slowly and deliberately. Patricia joined him, then a woman at the next table, then another diner. Within seconds, half the restaurant was applauding, not mockingly but supportively, recognition of courage witnessed. I sat back down, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Patricia squeezed my hand tightly. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. The hardest thing, but the right thing." Julian's voice was gentle. "Your mother would be incredibly proud of you right now." And for the first time in years, I believed that I'd finally chosen myself. Back at the Sterling Club, the birthday party had taken on a strange energy. Richard and Claudia returned at 9:20, both visibly tense. Veronica rushed up immediately, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Well? What happened? Did you tell her off?" Dad's voice was clipped and cold. "Not now, Veronica." He walked straight to the bar, ordering a double scotch, his face thunderous. Claudia pulled Veronica aside, whispering furiously. And I later learned from Patricia, who heard from other sources, that she was giving Veronica her version of events, painting me as dramatic and disrespectful. Veronica's expression shifted from curiosity to malicious satisfaction, probably already composing the social media posts shed right later about her ungrateful half-sister. Dad tried to return to normal party mode, accepting congratulations and making small talk with guests. But those who knew him well noticed his mood had soured completely. Claudia worked the room with practiced efficiency, making excuses. "Just some family drama, you know how adult children can be. So sensitive these days." She laughed lightly, dismissively, turning my legitimate hurt into a generational joke. But the careful facade she'd built was starting to crack in ways she didn't yet realize. Richard's brother Thomas and his wife Diane arrived at 9:45, apologizing profusely for their lateness. Thomas clapped Richard on the shoulder. "Sorry, man. Traffic was brutal coming from the east side." Richard looked confused. "I thought you said you couldn't make it tonight." Thomas' face showed genuine confusion. "What? No, we confirmed 2 weeks ago. You told us the party started at 9:30, remember?" Richard's brow furrowed. "The invitation said 7. Now Diane looked puzzled. "Our invitation definitely said 9:30. I have it in my purse if you want to see." Before Richard could respond, Claudia swooped in with her bright hostess smile. "Oh, there must have been some confusion with the invitation printings. No matter. You're here now. Let me get you both drinks." Thomas and Diane exchanged glances but let it go, moving into the party. But Thomas, who'd always been more observant than Richard gave him credit for, started noticing things throughout the evening. The photo displays scattered around the venue showed Veronica at various ages and stages: graduations, vacations, birthdays, awards. He counted 47 photos of Veronica. Photos of Natalie? He found 3, all from before age 12. All with their late mother Catherine in them, tucked in corners like afterthoughts. When Claudia's friends asked, "Where's your other daughter tonight?" Claudia's responses were dismissive. "Oh, Natalie couldn't make it. She's so busy with her own life these days. You know how it is with working mothers." The subtext was clear. Natalie was too self-involved to prioritize family. Around 10:30, Thomas pulled Richard aside near the venue's terrace, away from the crowd. "Hey, where is Natalie? I haven't seen her in months. I was hoping to catch up tonight." Richard's jaw tightened. "She chose not to come." "Why?" Thomas pressed. "The invitation specified adults only. She has a young child." Thomas' face showed confusion. "So? Half the people here tonight have kids. The Johnsons brought their 8-year-old grandson. The Watkins brought their daughter's twins. What made this adults only?" Richard had no answer, his face flushing as he realized the inconsistency. Claudia organized the event. She set the parameters. Thomas felt pieces clicking together in his mind. He remembered Natalie's college graduation 5 years ago, how Richard had arrived late with an excuse about a business emergency. Later, Thomas had learned through Patricia that there had been no emergency, that Claudia had convinced Richard they needed to help Veronica move into her apartment that same morning. He thought about Natalie's wedding, how Richard had left early, claiming Claudia was feeling ill, only for Thomas to see Claudia perfectly fine at a charity gala 2 days later. Every major event in Natalie's adult life had been undermined, and Claudia always had an excuse that pulled Richard away. "Richard, I need to ask you something about Dad's trust fund." Thomas' tone shifted, becoming more serious. Richard looked wary. "What about it?" Did you ever set up Natalie's distribution? She should have received her portion when she turned 30. Richard looked genuinely confused now. What are you talking about? Claudia told me that trust was dissolved years ago. Something about legal complications and tax issues. Thomas felt his blood run cold. Richard. I'm the executor of that trust. It was never dissolved. It's fully active and funded. In fact, Veronica received her distribution last year. All color drained from Richard's face. What? Veronica's only 19. The trust distributions don't happen until 30. The terms allow for early distribution with executor approval for legitimate educational or business purposes. Thomas explained carefully. Claudia came to me 18 months ago with a detailed business proposal for Veronica's startup company. Fashion, retail, or something. She had all the paperwork, said you'd signed off on it, needed my signature as executor. The proposal looked legitimate, so I approved the early distribution. $500,000. Richard's hands started shaking. What startup company? Veronica doesn't have any business. She's been partying her way through community college courses. Thomas felt sick. Richard, where did that money go? I don't know, Richard said, his voice barely above a whisper. But Natalie should have received hers 2 years ago. Where's her $500,000? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Richard turned and scanned the party crowd until he found Claudia, laughing with her friends near the dessert table. He walked toward her with purpose, Thomas following close behind. Richard took Claudia's elbow, not gently. We need to talk. Now, privately. Something in his tone made Claudia's smile falter. Richard, darling, we have guests. Now, he repeated, and there was steel in his voice that silenced her protests. They moved to a private side room used for coat storage. Thomas stayed by the door, arms crossed. Where's Natalie's trust fund money? Richard's voice was dangerously quiet. Claudia's face showed careful confusion. What are you talking about? $500,000. From my father's trust. She should have received it when she turned 30, 2 years ago. Where is it? Claudia tried to deflect, her voice light and dismissive. Oh, that. There were complications with the distribution. Legal issues that needed to be resolved. I've been working with the lawyers to sort it out. Thomas is the executor. Richard said coldly. He says there were no legal issues. He says the trust is perfectly functional since Veronica received her distribution last year. So I'll ask you again. Where is my daughter's money? The mask was slipping from Claudia's face, calculation replacing confusion. She must have realized the truth was coming out and shifted tactics. Fine. I used it to cover some of Veronica's expenses. She needed support, Richard. She's still finding her way. You stole from my daughter. Richard's voice was shaking now, rage barely contained. I didn't steal anything. Claudia shot back, her tone sharp now. I reallocated family resources to where they were needed most. Natalie has a job, she's self-sufficient. Veronica needed investment in her future. That wasn't your decision to make. Richard's voice rose to a shout. That was Natalie's inheritance from her grandfather. You had no right. I had every right. Claudia's own voice rose to match his. I'm your wife. I've spent 20 years building you up, managing this family, making you successful. Natalie has done nothing but remind you of your failures and your dead wife. The room went deadly silent. Thomas inhaled sharply. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. What did you just say? Claudia, realizing she'd gone too far but unable to back down now, pressed forward. You know it's true, Richard. You've been controlled by Catherine's memory for 20 years. That girl is just a living reminder of everything you lost. And she's never let you move forward. I've been trying to build a future with you, with Veronica, but you keep looking backward at what you can't have anymore. Richard's voice when he spoke was eerily calm. Get out. Claudia blinked. What? Get out of this party. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. We're done. Claudia laughed, but it sounded forced and shrill. You don't mean that. You're upset about the money. I understand. I'll figure out how to repay it. This isn't about the money, Richard said quietly. This is about 20 years of manipulation. 20 years of you systematically destroying my relationship with my daughter. 20 years of lies. I never lied to you, Claudia protested. You embezzled money from my daughter's inheritance and told me the trust was dissolved. That's a lie. You told Thomas I approved Veronica's early distribution. I never did. That's a lie. You've been scheduling conflicts to make me miss Natalie's important events for years. How many of those emergencies were real, Claudia? Her silence was damning. Richard's voice grew harder. You told extended family that Natalie refused to visit when I was the one who excluded her. You told me she was too proud to accept help when you never offered any. You've spent 2 decades rewriting reality, and I was too blind and too weak to see it. Richard. Claudia's voice shifted to pleading now. I did what I thought was best for us. For our family. Veronica is your family. Richard corrected coldly. Natalie is my family. And you made me choose between you and her over and over again, and I chose wrong every single time. That ends now. Get out. Claudia's face transformed, all pretense dropping away. The venom that emerged was shocking in its intensity. Fine. You want to throw away everything we built? Go ahead. But you're a pathetic man, Richard. Weak and pathetic. Without me, you're nothing. That ungrateful brat you call a daughter will never forgive you, no matter how much you grovel. You've destroyed that relationship beyond repair, and I helped you do it. She smiled viciously. You'll regret this. My lawyers will take you for everything you have. Try. Richard said coldly. My lawyers will have filed embezzlement charges by Monday morning. Every transaction you've made with family funds for the past 20 years will be audited. If I find more theft, and I suspect I will, you won't just lose the divorce. You'll face criminal charges. Claudia's face went white. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and stormed from the room. Thomas quickly blocked the doorway leading back to the main party, redirecting her toward the exit. I think it's best if you leave quietly, he said firmly. Security was already approaching, having been signaled by Richard. Claudia found herself being escorted out through a side entrance, still in her elegant party dress, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. In the main party space, Veronica had noticed the commotion. She ran toward the exit, catching up with her mother. Mom? What's happening? Why is security here? Claudia's face was twisted with rage and humiliation. Your stepfather has lost his mind. Come on, we're leaving. Veronica looked back at Richard, who had emerged from the side room looking 10 years older. You're going to regret this, she shouted at him. My mom is the best thing that ever happened to you. You're throwing away everything for that ungrateful sister of mine. Richard's voice was quiet but clear. No, Veronica. Catherine was the best thing that ever happened to me. And Natalie. And I destroyed both those relationships by letting your mother manipulate me for 20 years. That's what I regret. He watched Veronica storm out after her mother, the two of them disappearing into the night. The remaining party guests had gathered, whispering, phones out, definitely recording. Richard's birthday celebration had just imploded spectacularly. He stood alone in his formal wear, surrounded by expensive decorations and uncomfortable guests, and for the first time in decades, he saw his life clearly. Saturday morning arrived with harsh sunlight streaming through Richard's bedroom windows. He woke alone in the house for the first time in 20 years. The massive bed feeling empty and cold. His head pounded from too much scotch and too little sleep. The birthday decorations were still up throughout the house, cheerful banners and balloons now seeming to mock him. His phone showed 17 missed calls from Claudia, 12 from Veronica, and a string of text messages he couldn't bring himself to read yet. But there was one text that caught his attention, sent at 7 in the morning from Thomas. I'm proud of you, brother. That took courage. Now go fix things with Natalie. Don't wait. Richard spent the morning walking through his house with new eyes, really seeing it for the first time in years. Photos of Veronica were everywhere, on the mantel, covering the refrigerator, filling entire walls in the hallway. Professional portraits, candid snapshots, milestones documented in exhaustive detail. He searched for photos of Natalie and found them conspicuously absent. He finally located 3 pictures tucked away in his home office, all from before Catherine's death. One showed Catherine holding baby Natalie, both smiling at the camera with pure joy. Another was Natalie at age 7, missing her front teeth, holding up a perfect report card. The last was from Natalie's 11th birthday, just months before Catherine got sick, the 3 of them at a zoo. Natalie between her parents looking completely happy. Richard sat at his desk with these photos spread before him and wept. Deep, wrenching sobs that had been holding back for decades. He cried for Catherine. The wife had never properly mourned because Claudia had rushed him into a new marriage before he'd processed his grief. He cried for Natalie. The daughter had failed in every way that mattered. He cried for all the moments he'd missed, all the times he'd chosen wrong, all the years he couldn't get back. His phone rang, Claudia calling again, and he sent it to voicemail without hesitation. Monday morning, Richard sat in his attorney's office with a clear mission. Gordon Webster had been his lawyer for 15 years, and his face showed concern as Richard explained what he needed. I want a complete forensic audit of every account Claudia had access to, every transaction, every withdrawal, every transfer. I need to know exactly how much she stole from Natalie. Gordon leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. Richard, this could get very ugly. Claudia will fight back hard. I don't care, Richard said flatly. My daughter was robbed, and I enabled it by being blind and stupid. I want to know everything. The audit took 3 days and revealed damage worse than Richard had imagined. Claudia hadn't just stolen Natalie's trust fund distribution. Over the years, she'd systematically embezzled from multiple accounts Richard had set up for Natalie. College funds that were never used because of Natalie's scholarship, savings bonds from Catherine's life insurance that were supposed to mature in Natalie's name, investment accounts Richard had established after Natalie's birth. All of it had been quietly funneled to accounts in Veronica's name or to Claudia's personal accounts. The total was staggering, nearly $800,000 stolen over 2 decades. Richard sat in Gordon's office, staring at the pages of transactions, each one a betrayal had been too blind to see. I signed documents authorizing some of these transfers, he said, his voice hollow. Look at the dates. Gordon pointed to several transactions. Most of these happened when you were traveling for business or during major deals. The documents you signed were buried in stacks of other paperwork. Claudia knew exactly what she was doing. Richard thought of all the times Claudia had brought him papers to sign at dinner, during phone calls, between meetings. He'd trusted her completely with family finances while he focused on his business empire. That trust had cost his daughter everything. He tried calling Natalie that evening. The call went straight to voicemail. Her recorded voice was professional and distant. You've reached Natalie. Please leave a message. He couldn't find words, just hung up. He tried Patricia next, and she answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, Richard. Her voice was cool but not hostile. Patricia. I need to talk to Natalie. I need to explain. She doesn't want to talk to you, Patricia said firmly. And honestly, Richard, can you blame her? No, he admitted. But I need her to know that I know now. About the money, about Claudia's manipulation, about everything I did wrong. Patricia sighed. Richard, she's had 32 years of you not seeing her. You can't expect her to suddenly be ready to listen because you finally opened your eyes. I know I don't deserve it. Richard's voice cracked. But I have to try. Patricia, please. There was a long silence. She's building a new life, Richard. A good one. Julian offered her a position as communications director for his foundation network. Excellent salary. Real respect. Room for growth. She accepted. She's finally thriving, and I won't let you disrupt that unless you're absolutely serious about changing. I am, Richard said. I'll do whatever it takes. Over the next 2 weeks, Richard's life underwent a complete transformation. He filed for divorce from Claudia, his lawyers presenting evidence of embezzlement that made any negotiation one-sided. Claudia tried to fight back with false accusations about Richard's business practices and even attempted to claim he'd been unfaithful, but the documentary evidence against her was overwhelming. She hired 3 different lawyers, each one eventually advising her to settle rather than face potential criminal charges. Richard also pressed charges for the embezzlement, and while Claudia's attorneys were fighting to minimize her legal exposure, the fact remained that she'd systematically stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from a family member. Veronica made everything worse by taking to social media with long, rambling posts about her mother's victimization and her stepfather's cruelty. She painted Richard as an unstable man having a midlife crisis, destroying a loving family for imaginary slights. Some of Claudia's friends believed this narrative and turned on Richard publicly, but others, including several of Richard's longtime business associates who'd known him before Claudia, reached out privately with support. We always wondered about some of Claudia's behavior, one confided. But it wasn't our place to say anything. Richard realized how much Claudia had isolated him from his original support network, replacing his genuine friends with her social circle. 3 weeks after the disastrous birthday party, Richard received an unexpected phone call from Julian Montgomery. They met at a quiet downtown coffee shop, Richard arriving 15 minutes early out of nervous anticipation. Julian greeted him cordially but not warmly, and they sat across from each other with cups of coffee neither was really drinking. I wanted you to know that your daughter is exceptional, Julian began. I've offered her the communications director position at our foundation network, and she's accepted. Her first week has been remarkable. She's intelligent, creative, hard-working, and has a gift for connecting with people. Richard felt pride and shame in equal measure. I'm glad she's found recognition somewhere, since she certainly didn't get it from me. Julian studied him carefully. What are your intentions, Richard? I want to make things right, Richard said. I know I can't undo the past, but I have to try to build something better going forward. Natalie doesn't trust you, Julian said bluntly. Can you blame her? No. Are you willing to do the real work? Not just grand gestures, but consistent, patient, humble work. Richard met Julian's eyes. Yes. Whatever it takes, for however long it takes. Julian was quiet for a moment, then said, I need to tell you something you might not know. I was in love with Catherine before you met her. We grew up together, and I plan to marry her someday. Richard felt shock ripple through him. I didn't know. She never knew either. Julian continued. When she met you at college and came home talking about this brilliant, ambitious man she'd fallen for, I could see she was truly happy. So I stepped aside because her happiness mattered more than my feelings. I watched from a distance as you built a life together, had Natalie, created what looked like a beautiful family. Julian's voice hardened slightly. And then Catherine got sick. And I watched you shut down emotionally. I watched you throw yourself into work instead of being present for her final months. I watched you remarry so quickly that Catherine's grave didn't even have grass growing on it yet. I watched you let that new wife systematically erase your daughter from your life. Richard felt each word like a physical blow. I was lost after Catherine died. I didn't know how to process the grief, how to be a single father, how to keep going. Claudia offered stability, or what I thought was stability. She offered control. Julian corrected. And you let her have it because it was easier than facing your pain. But your daughter paid the price for your avoidance. He paused, then added, I've kept track of Natalie through Patricia over the years because Catherine was my dearest friend, and I felt I owed it to her memory to watch over her daughter when you wouldn't. That dinner at Lumiere wasn't an accident. Patricia and I planned it specifically because we wanted Natalie to see that she has people who value her. Richard absorbed this information, realizing how many people had been caring for his daughter while he neglected her. What should I do, Julian? Richard asked quietly. You do the work, Julian said firmly. Real work. Therapy to process your grief and understand your patterns. Consistent effort to show up for Natalie and your granddaughter. Patience, because trust is rebuilt slowly, and you accept that she may never fully forgive you. But you keep trying anyway because that's what real parents do. He stood to leave, then added, I'm telling you this because Catherine loved you once, and I have to believe there's still something worth saving in the man she chose. Don't make me regret giving you this information. Richard took Julian's advice seriously. He found a therapist who specialized in grief and family dynamics. In their sessions, he began unpacking decades of avoidance and poor choices. He journaled about Catherine, finally allowing himself to properly mourn the wife he'd lost. He recognized patterns in his own behavior, how he'd let Claudia make decisions because it meant he didn't have to face uncomfortable emotions or difficult conversations. He worked on understanding why he'd found it easier to accept Claudia's narrative about Natalie than to investigate the truth himself. He also took concrete action to repair the financial damage. Richard established a trust fund for Lily, his granddaughter whom he barely knew, properly structured with ironclad legal protections that neither he nor anyone else could touch. $2 million. Available for education expenses or as a lump sum when she turned 25. He had the documents drawn up by independent attorneys, then sent them to Natalie through Julian with a letter. I can't undo the past or restore what Claudia stole from you, but I can try to build a better future. This is for Lily, with no strings attached. She deserves a grandfather who shows up for her. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but she deserves better than I gave you. I'm working on becoming that man. When Natalie received the trust documents at her new office, delivered personally by Julian, she read the letter 3 times. She didn't cry, didn't call Richard, didn't send a thank you note, but she also didn't send the documents back. She filed them carefully in a drawer labeled pending. Neither accepting nor rejecting, simply acknowledging. Julian reported this back to Richard. She kept them. That's something. It wasn't much, but for Richard, it was a glimmer of hope. He began sending flowers to Natalie's office every Friday. Not extravagant arrangements, but thoughtful ones with cards that simply said, "Thinking of you and Lily. Love. Dad." For the first month, he got no response. No thank you, no acknowledgement, nothing. But Patricia told him. She keeps them on her desk. They sit there all week. She hasn't thrown a single arrangement away. Richard clung to these small signs like a drowning man clutching driftwood. He wrote letters he didn't send, practiced apologies to an empty room, and waited with a patience he'd never demonstrated before in his life. 3 months passed this way. Flowers sent, silence received, hope maintained against all logic. Christmas season arrived with its usual mix of forced cheer and genuine magic. Richard had maintained his pattern of quiet consistency. Flowers every Friday. Deposits into Lily's trust fund. Letters sent through Julian expressing regret and hope. He never pushed for contact. Never demanded forgiveness. Just showed up in the background of Natalie's life like a persistent ghost, trying to prove he was real. Natalie, meanwhile, was genuinely thriving in her new position. The foundation work was fulfilling. Julian was a supportive mentor, and her salary allowed her to move to a better apartment in a neighborhood with good schools. One December evening, as Natalie was making dinner, Lily asked a question that stopped her cold. "Mommy, why don't I see Grandpa Richard?" Natalie carefully stirred the pasta, choosing her words with precision. "Grandpa and I had some disagreements, sweetheart. Sometimes adults need space from each other to figure things out." Lily frowned, her 5-year-old mind working through this concept. "But he sends you flowers every week." And Mr. Julian said, "Grandpa asks about me all the time. If he wants to see me, why can't he?" Natalie sat down at the table, pulling Lily into her lap. "It's complicated, baby. Grandpa made some choices that hurt Mommy's feelings for a very long time. I'm not sure if those hurt feelings can be fixed. But you always tell me that saying sorry and trying to do better is important. Lily pointed out with the devastating logic of young children. You said people deserve second chances if they really mean it. Natalie felt her carefully constructed walls crack slightly. You're right, I do say that. So can I meet him? Just to see what he's like. Lily's eyes were wide and hopeful. Sophie talks about her grandpa Julian all the time, and it makes me wish I had a grandpa too. That night, after Lily was asleep, Natalie sat with her therapist via video call, processing the conversation. Her therapist, Dr. Chen, a calm woman in her 50s, listened carefully. What do you want, Natalie? I want him to have been different. Natalie admitted. I want a father who chose me, who showed up, who made me feel valued. I want 20 years back. You can't change the past. Doctor, Chen said gently, but you can decide what you want for your future and for Lily's future. The question isn't what you wish had happened. It's what you're willing to accept going forward. Natalie spent a week thinking about it, then wrote a letter to her father. Her hand shook as she put pen to paper, each word carefully considered. Dad, Lily wants to meet you. I'm willing to try, for her sake. But I have conditions. She listed them clearly. He needed to continue therapy. There would be strict boundaries about consistency and reliability. Claudia and Veronica were not to be involved in any capacity, and if he broke these rules even once, they were done permanently. This is your only chance, she wrote. I won't put myself or my daughter through repeated cycles of disappointment. Show up for real, or don't show up at all. She sealed the envelope before she could change her mind and mailed it the next morning. Richard received the letter 2 days later and read it with tears streaming down his face. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call, but he stopped himself. Instead, he texted, I agree to everything. Thank you for this chance. I won't waste it. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, I love you, Natalie. I should have said it more. I should have shown it better. I'm learning how to be the father you deserved. Natalie's response came hours later. We'll meet at Riverside Park, Saturday at 2. Patricia and Julian will be there as well. This is supervised. And it's brief. Saturday arrived cold and bright. The winter sun harsh against patches of unmelted snow. Richard arrived at the park at 1:30, too nervous to be on time. He saw Patricia and Julian first, standing near the playground with 2 little girls running around. Then he saw Natalie walking toward them, and his breath caught. She looked strong and confident in a way he'd never noticed before, or maybe had never let himself see. She stood with her arms crossed, her posture defensive but not closed off entirely. Richard approached slowly, acutely aware that he was on trial. Hi, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Thank you for meeting me. Natalie nodded but didn't speak yet. Richard didn't try to hug her or force intimacy they hadn't earned. Instead, he said what he'd been practicing with his therapist for weeks. I failed you as a father. I let Claudia manipulate me. But that's not an excuse because I should have protected you regardless. I was lost after your mother died, and instead of dealing with my grief, I let someone else dictate my life and my relationships. I abandoned you when you needed me most, and I can't change any of that. But I'm here now, if you'll let me be. Natalie's voice was steady but cool. I don't trust you. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. I understand, Richard said quietly. But Lily deserves to know her grandfather. So I'm willing to try. For her. Natalie's emphasis on those last 2 words was clear. This wasn't for him. Richard nodded. I'll earn your trust however long it takes. I know actions matter more than words. Yes, they do. Natalie agreed. You hurt me, Dad. Deeply. For years. That doesn't disappear because you suddenly realized it was wrong. Before Richard could respond, Lily ran over, her cheeks pink from cold and play. She stopped a few feet away, studying him with serious eyes. Are you my grandpa? Richard knelt down so they were at eye level, and his voice was thick with emotion. I am. You must be Lily. You sent my mommy flowers, Lily said, still assessing him. I did, Richard confirmed. Your mommy is very special to me. She's special to me too, Lily said firmly. You made her sad. The accusation from this tiny person hit Richard harder than any words from Natalie. His voice broke. I did. I'm very, very sorry. Lily considered this with the seriousness only children can manage. Are you going to make her sad again? I'm going to try very hard not to, Richard promised. I'm going to show up and be here for both of you, if you'll let me. Lily looked back at her mother, who gave a small nod. Then Lily looked at Richard again. Okay. Want to see me do the monkey bars? Richard felt something unlock in his chest. He'd love nothing more. He spent the next hour watching Lily play, listening to her chatter about kindergarten and her best friend Sophie and the book she was reading. He didn't try to do too much, didn't overwhelm her with questions or gifts or promises. He just was present, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. They started slowly and carefully. Supervised visits every other Saturday, 2 hours each time. Richard showed up 15 minutes early every single week. Never canceled. Never made excuses. He brought small, thoughtful gifts. Art supplies because Natalie mentioned Lily loved to draw. A collection of fairy tales that Natalie had loved as a child. He listened more than he talked. He asked about Natalie's work and actually remembered the details she shared. He attended Lily's preschool winter concert, sitting in the back row, not presuming any special place but just being there with his phone recording like any other proud grandparent. The breakthrough came 2 months in, during a cold February week. Lily spiked a fever of 103 degrees on a Wednesday night. Natalie's car wouldn't start, and she needed to get to the pharmacy for medication. She stood in her apartment, sick child on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through contacts. Her finger hovered over her father's number. Every instinct screamed not to call, not to give him the opportunity to disappoint her again. But Lily was crying, and she needed help. She pressed call. Richard answered on the second ring. Natalie. Lily's sick. My car won't start. I need to get to the pharmacy. She hated how small her voice sounded. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Richard said immediately. Text me your address and what medication you need. No questions, no lectures, no conditions. 13 minutes later, he knocked on her door with a bag from the pharmacy, a container of soup from Lily's favorite restaurant, and children's medicine. He checked Lily's temperature, dampened a washcloth for her forehead, set up a movie, and then prepared to leave. Call me if you need anything else, he said quietly at the door. I mean that, anytime. Natalie watched him go, something shifting in her chest. She texted him later that night. Thank you. His response was immediate. Anytime. That's what family does. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal. The legal situation with Claudia concluded with a settlement that required her to repay $800,000 plus penalties and court costs. She avoided jail time by agreeing to a plea deal, but the financial consequences were devastating for her. Veronica, who'd had been living off Claudia's stolen money, suddenly found herself cut off from the luxury lifestyle she'd known. She stopped posting on social media, stopped trying to contact Richard, effectively disappeared from his life. Richard mourned that relationship briefly, but he recognized it had been built on lies and enabling rather than genuine connection. June brought Lily's 6th birthday, and Natalie made a decision that showed how far they'd come. She invited Richard to the party, not as the guest of honor, not with any special privileges, just as grandpa among Lily's friends and their families. Richard arrived with a gift he'd spent weeks building. A wooden dollhouse, 3 stories tall, with intricate details and handcrafted furniture. Lily shrieked with joy when she saw it, and Richard's eyes welled up as she threw her arms around him. Did you make this, Grandpa? I did, he said, his voice thick. I wanted you to have something special. The party included Patricia, Julian, Sophie, Natalie's work friends, neighbors from the apartment building. Richard stayed in the background, content to help set up and clean up, to watch Natalie surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. At one point, he found himself standing next to Julian at the snack table. "Thank you," Richard said quietly. "For giving her opportunities I never did. For showing her what real support looks like." Julian studied him for a moment. "You're doing better, Richard. The consistency matters. Keep showing up." It wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement. And Richard would take it. As the party wound down and Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement, Natalie and Richard found themselves cleaning up together. They worked in comfortable silence, a first in their relationship. Finally, Natalie spoke. "You're doing better. I see the effort." Richard paused in folding a tablecloth. "I have a long way to go." "Yeah," Natalie agreed. "But you're going. That matters." Richard took a breath, then spoke the words he'd been practicing with his therapist. "I thought providing financially was enough. I thought success equaled love, that if I built an empire, it would somehow compensate for emotional absence. Your mother tried to tell me. You tried to show me. I wasn't listening because I didn't want to face the hard work of actually being present." "And now?" Natalie asked. "Now I'm listening," Richard said. "Even if it's 20 years late, even if I can't undo the damage, I'm listening. And I'll keep listening for however long you'll let me." Natalie was quiet, then said softly, "Better late than never, I guess." It wasn't forgiveness, not complete, but it was progress. As Richard prepared to leave, Lily woke briefly, sleepy and confused. "Bye, Grandpa. See you Saturday." Saturday visits had become routine. Something Lily looked forward to. "Absolutely, sweetheart," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. At the door, Natalie surprised him. "Dad." He turned, hope and fear in his eyes. "Thank you for trying. Really trying. Thank you for letting me," Richard replied. Alone in his car, Richard reflected on the journey from that disastrous birthday party to this moment. Had lost Claudia, lost Veronica, lost his old social circle and the life he'd built on superficial foundations. But he was gaining something more valuable. A real relationship with his daughter and granddaughter. It was fragile, required constant maintenance, came with no guarantees, but it was authentic in a way nothing in his life had been for decades. He thought about that night at Lumiere when his world fell apart, and he realized it had been the catalyst he'd needed. Months became a year. Richard never missed a Saturday. He attended every school event, every milestone, showed up early and stayed to help. Slowly, painfully, Natalie's walls came down. They started having coffee after Lily's visits, just talking about work and life and ordinary things. The conversations weren't deep, weren't about their painful history, but they were real. They were building something new rather than trying to resurrect something that had never properly existed. It wasn't the relationship they could have had if Richard had made better choices decades ago. But it was the relationship they were building now, brick by careful brick. One evening, Natalie wrote in her journal, a practice her therapist had recommended. "Healing isn't linear. Trust isn't automatic. But sometimes, people can change. I don't know if Dad and I will ever have a perfect relationship, and I've accepted that we probably won't. Too much damage was done, too many years were lost, but we're trying, and he's showing up consistently for the first time in my adult life. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be enough because the alternative is staying angry forever, and I'm tired of anger." She continued writing, her thoughts flowing more easily now. "Lily will grow up knowing her grandfather. That's more than I had in my own childhood after Mom died. She'll have memories of Saturday park visits and birthday parties, and someone who shows up reliably. That's valuable, even if my own relationship with Dad remains complicated. And I've learned something crucial. I don't need my father's approval to know my worth. I am enough with or without him. My value isn't determined by whether he recognizes it. But having him try, actually show up and do the work? It means something. Not everything, but something." Her final paragraph captured the transformation. That night at Lumiere, When I chose myself over his party, I thought I was giving up on family. I thought I was closing a door permanently, but I was actually making space for the family I deserved. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is walking away from people who don't value you. Setting a boundary that says I deserve better than this. And sometimes, if you're incredibly lucky, they'll realize what they lost and do the genuine work to earn their way back. Not everyone gets that second chance. Not everyone takes it seriously when they do. But when both things happen, when the person who hurt you actually transforms and you're able to slowly, carefully rebuild trust, healing becomes possible. Not easy, not quick, not guaranteed, but possible. And sometimes, possibility is enough to start with. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from a family member to protect yourself? Did they ever come back and do the real work to repair the relationship? Drop your story in the comments below, because I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt rejected by family or had to choose yourself over toxic relationships, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want more real stories about family, healing, and finding your worth. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. Remember, you are enough, you are worthy, and you deserve people in your life who see your value. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next story.